welcome to another episode of Ask 360, where we are answering all your health and fitness related questions. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but we have a question today from Jane. And Jane asks quite simply, why is my pain worse at night? This is a great question. Thank you, Jane. And it's something that is very relevant to a lot of people in pain. So when we have increased pain levels at night, it can affect both the quality and the quantity of our sleep. And this in turn can lead to decreased productivity, altered mood states, and other health issues. And it can also impact on our pain itself. So we know that sleep is one of our major recovery, regeneration, and healing mechanisms. And so when that gets impacted, our ability to heal and decrease pain gets impacted. And that way we get into this vicious cycle. So why does this occur? There's a number of reasons. The first one is, I guess, more of an obvious reason. So it's the position that we're in. When we're it's asleep, we're basically assuming a position for a much longer time than we typically would, usually if we're sitting or doing some other activity. If we have an injury or pain state that is worsened by movement or sustained positions in a certain direction, then that is likely to be worsened and impacted when we're holding those sustained positions at night. So, for example, if you have a neck joint issue that is sensitive to sort of back bending or movement to the side, and you're used to sleeping on that affected side, perhaps with one pillow, even though when you usually experience this pain, it's with sort of end range motion, because you're sustaining this position for a long period of time, it doesn't need to be quite as big a movement to bring on those symptoms. So you might fall asleep with your head in a slight bent position and it's not particularly painful, but because you're holding it in that position over time, that area gets compressed, sensitized, and you start to experience pain. So for these type of presentations, the solution is just to try and modify the position. So using that example again, if you have pain with the head bent to that side, you might try using a couple of pillows to bring the head into more of a neutral position, so that you're in less of that aggravating position, and that can often decrease the associated night pain. Also, there's a lot of pain states that are just generally better when you're up and moving around. So a lot of people will report pain when they're sitting for a prolonged period of time, either in the spine, in the back, or the neck, or peripheral areas of the body. When we're experiencing an inflammatory condition, that inflammation basically pulls in one area. So because we're not moving, we're not flushing the fluid, we're not operating our lymphatic system at the same efficiency. And so the fluid is allowed to pull, that swelling is allowed to pull, and inflammation gathers up over time. And the receptors that are located in that area become more sensitive, and they spark a response, and we get pain that way. We're also less distracted at night. Obviously, we're also unconscious. But during the day, there's so much going on in our brain. There's so many different inputs through all our different senses that subconsciously, we're often experiencing less input from the injured part of the body. And therefore, we're producing less of an output in terms of pain. When we're asleep, however, even though we're unconscious, the messages from the injured part of the body, what we call a nociception, that system is still operating. And because of that, our brain is perhaps more able to detect that stimulus. And so that starts to build over time and starts to cause pain. Probably the most relevant factor, however, is the changes in the immune system that happen. So according to our circadian rhythms, when we're asleep, we get changes in the hormones that are going through our body. We get less of the anti-inflammatory chemicals going around, and we get more sort of pro-inflammatory cytokines that are going towards those injured or inflamed areas of the body, again, causing that nociceptive system to be on high alert, and therefore causing us to feel more of a painful response. So for that type of presentation, the solution is really to address what is causing the problem in the first place. So if there's something that we're doing during the day that is causing that area to be chronically inflamed, then we need to address that, whether it's loading strategies, whether it's offloading using manual therapy, taping, whatever sort of treatment that we're going down, or it may even be the use use of some pharmacological intervention to try and decrease the stress on the area during the day so that there's less inflammation building at night. Some other relevant strategies, often when if it's a case where we're waking because of the pain, it might be that the pain is part of the reason that we're waking, but it's sort of combined with something else that's causing that waking. So we might have typically unrestful sleep anyway. And if this is the case, it might be related to stress. It might be related to our habits during the later part of the day. So things like alcohol, smoking, nicotine before bed, we know is bad. Obviously, we all hear about the use of screens and devices before bed. So sometimes just incorporating some of that sleep hygiene can allow for a little bit more restful sleep. And therefore, when we do have that signaling from the periphery that something is under a degree of stress, it doesn't have that other stress in combination causing us to wake. If we are suffering anxiety or other mood states that are also contributing to an unrestful sleep, then addressing these maybe with a therapist might be a worthwhile intervention to help address our night pain. Also, that nocturnal urination. So if we're having to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, that may be combining with the pain to cause a state of wakefulness as well. So if that's the case, if you're waking in the middle of the night with something hurting, but you also really need to go to the bathroom, then you may want to look at limiting your fluid intake during the last few hours before you go to bed. If you do wake in pain, a lot of people will just sort of roll over and try to tough it out and get back to sleep. And sometimes that works, but other times it's not an effective strategy. What can be useful is just getting up and moving around. So walking around for 5 or 10 minutes, trying not to wake yourself up too much, so not sort of dancing around the living room, but going for a bit of a walk can help just get the lymphatic system moving a little bit and start flushing around some of that swelling and inflammation. And that can help us get back to bed without as much discomfort. Now, it is very important that we highlight that night pain and even sort of severe morning stiffness can be indicative of more serious pathologies. And in particular, conditions related to rheumatology. So things like rheumatoid arthritis, spondyloarthritis, ankylosing spondylitis. These sort of conditions typically produce night pain, and they have that typical presentation where you go to bed with less symptoms, but you wake up maybe 3, 4, 5 hours later as that immune system starts to change, and then often wake up very stiff as well. So if this is the case, and this is going on for a prolonged period of time, more than you would expect for a typical musculoskeletal issue, it is important that you see that you have that addressed with an assessment with a physiotherapist or a doctor. And also, we don't like to talk about this, but occasionally night pain is associated with cancer. So tumors will tend to cause this sort of presentation as well. So again, if you do have night pain and it's not improving over time, it is important that you undergo a thorough assessment to rule out any non-musculoskeletal causes of your problem. And because these obviously things that require very different treatment, and if not treated, may have fairly disastrous consequences. So I hope that has been helpful, Jane. Thank you very much for your question. If you do have questions, please send them in. We love chatting about this stuff, and we love trying to help people out. Thanks very much for listening and watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next episode.